What's up, dear Nigerians? Welcome to our digital living room. Today we're talking about our Nigerian mothers. Dear Nigerians, our mothers were tigers. But first, if you are new here, welcome to Dear Nigerians. This is the space for millennials, Gen Z, and more with a Nigerian influence identity to speak openly about who we are, acknowledge where we're coming from, and embrace the full expressions of ourselves. In this episode, we're going to be talking about our mothers and discovering more about them and who they were and how they parented and how that impacted us in our lives. But before we get to it, dear Nigerians, I need to give some history with the title Dear Nigerians, Our Mothers Were Tigers. Specifically, where did the term tiger mother come from? So let me give a little history, okay? In 2011, a Yale law professor named Amy Chua released a memoir called Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mom. And in that book, she was chronicling her parenting style with her two daughters. And she, being a woman of Chinese descent, her parenting is largely influenced by her Chinese ancestry. So here are some things she said: that she didn't allow her children to watch TV at night. She didn't allow her kids to attend sleepovers. That sounds a little bit like my childhood. But other things too, like calling her children garbage in public, picking instruments for her children to learn specifically, and then making them practice their instruments, whether it was piano or violin, for 4 to 6 hours on end, while her American friends were, giving themselves pats on the back if they were able to get their kids to do at least 30 minutes in a week. Keep in mind, this woman is parenting against the backdrop of American culture. So she released this book and, of course, got criticism. It's too harsh. She's too hard, right? And some people also said, this style of parenting is analogous to the American stage mom, the Jewish mom. And I want to say for dear Nigerians, this style is analogous to our moms, dear Nigerians, the Nigerian mom. Whether she's Yoruba or Igbo or Edo, it doesn't matter. Our mothers were also tigers, okay? And the flavor of a Nigerian mom's tigerness, in my experience, it is laced with an uncanny level of creativity, intensity, spiciness that as a child you just cannot help but to get your mind right. Okay? And for us, it applies to education and academics and extracurricular activities, but it goes all over the place. Like it applies to our friendships, the way we dress, the hairstyles we have, the underwear we wear, what type of underwear we wear, when we wear the underwear. I mean, like it is deep rooted. I love this because as I was preparing for this episode, I actually stumbled on an Instagram post, and I cannot take credit for this content. The post was from someone named Nika.Diwa. They did a skit where the man who is Nigerian sent some text to his mother, and he begins to say, Mom, I'm leaving my wife and kids. I just want to let you know, and I don't want any judgment from you. Here's mom's response: Emeka, the devil is using you today. You would leave your harvest, the mother of your children? He says, Mom, I'm not happy anymore. I can't stay. Mom, my enemies have succeeded. You think marriage is for happiness? Do you think I came to America wearing sandals in the snow so you will be happy? He says, Yes. Mom says, Common sense is not a flower that grows in every garden. Wisdom is chasing you, but you are moving faster. This ignorance will be exorcised from you today, for I am your God. I laughed when I saw this post because it had me flat laid out. Because you know what? Now, I have not had this type of conversation with my mother, but the notes, the tone, the expressions, I have heard some of this in my lifetime. Okay, so this topic, dear Nigerians, our mothers were tigers. This is real, guys. This is real. Okay, now before we get into that, let's go to the tailblazer. I want to tell you a story. I want to tell you a story about a real instance that happened in my life. I've told it in story format, but there's nothing fake about this. Here we go. The name of the story is called Nightmare at the Museum. Story, story, story. Once upon a time, time, time. It was a beautiful August morning. Chicago's sun was shining bright, and it also managed to be kind. It allowed a cool, sweet breeze to envelope our bodies in comfort. It was also my birthday. And on this day, I zigzagged away from my usual schedule, and I wanted some time with my kids. This, for me, was the best gift I could give myself. So I took them out to the Children's Museum, and I allowed for some good play. At some point, my little ones needed a snack, so we settled in the museum cafe for a quick bite. We had settled at the table and gotten to the middle of our meals when an elderly nanny with three young children settled into the table next to us. The nanny proceeded to unpack lunches she had prepared for the kids when the oldest child, a boy around 5 or 6, declared he wanted to buy a snack from the cafe. At this point, the nanny had settled the two youngest at their meals, including the youngest, a baby, who sat on Nanny's laps while Nanny spoon fed her. The nanny said they wouldn't buy something from the cafe, to which the boy retorted, "Why? Didn't you bring money?" "No, I didn't," Nanny responded. And at that point, the boy started a tantrum, laced with wails and cries. "I want it," he wailed. "I want it." Then it turned into a protest. "I want it. I want it." The boy abstaining from the food the nanny had packed for him. Having dealt with my share of toddler behaviors in my own home, I paid the interaction no mind. His chants were just a buzzing noise behind me, my back turned away from their table. That is, until the boy upped the ante. He then asked, "Why didn't you bring the money? You're so stupid. You're such a bad nanny. You're a stupid nanny." Then I heard a jab. I glanced back, and I realized the little boy had formed his hand into a fist and delivered it forcefully into the nanny's arm. Remember, she was an elderly nanny. "I'm going to tell my daddy to send you away." Then he began to practice, even though his father was nowhere in sight. "Send her away, Daddy. She's a bad nanny. She's stupid. Send her away." Nanny had remained silent through the protests, perhaps hoping that her silence would lead him to ultimately calm down. But the young boy upped the ante even more. He slammed his hands against the table and fled outside the cafe as if to run into the parking lot. At this point, a museum employee that had been watching the interaction ran after the boy, authoritatively declaring that he stay in the cafe. It worked, until the boy did it again and again. And at this point, Nanny decided staying at the cafe was no longer worth it. She rose up, clearly embarrassed, knowing all eyes in the room were on her. I asked her if she needed some help, but she couldn't bring herself to form words. Then I rubbed her shoulder, told her she was doing great. She slumped her back, stating a defeated thank you, and walked out of the cafe with the children in her care, all eyes in the room still trailing after them. End of story. All right, y'all. So why am I sharing this story? I'm going to start here. When I was younger, growing up in the US, having come from Nigeria, there was a trope I had, a humorous trope with my friends, the African parent trope, like when I was interacting with my friends, they got to understand that okay, there's some things about Aramide that are different. She can't do sleepovers, she can't go to some parties with us. So it became like a trope, a joking trope where it's like my parents, my African parents are such a limitation. I can't do this, I can't do that. I must do this, get all A's. I must do that, respect all my teachers. So it became a trope. And to be quite frank, in the process of that trope, I can't come to the party, guys. I have African parents. I can't wear those clothes, guys. I have African parents. In saying that trope, it was joking, but also a little bit of annoyance for me, and also a little bit of like, when I become a parent, I'm gonna be kinder. I'm gonna be nicer. But when I was in this museum, hearing this child doing his thing, as I said in the story, at some point I was just ignoring it. It was just buzz, right? A child is having a tantrum. You're gonna see that everywhere. But at the point where I heard his fist jab into the nanny's arm, I kid you not, there was a program in me that rose up like, oh, no, you didn't, son. Oh, no, you didn't. And that was the time when I turned my head back and really looked at the situation, you know, and I realized that was a moment that I realized, you know what? As I'm raising my kids and I'm giving them values and trying to teach them things, it's very likely that even though as a child I would say I'd be a different type of parent, you know, and truly I am parenting in a different way. However, there's still this program in me, right? And as a child, I was saying I'd be a different parent, but now as I see the world, it's very possible that as my kids go out to the world and they see their friends, it's very possible that they'd look at me and be like, "Ugh, I have Nigerian parents. I can't do this. I can't do that." Right? I'm saying this because at face value, if you heard the title of this episode, Dear Nigerians, Our Mothers Were Tigers, you might think, oh man, she's coming for our mamas. Maybe that's maybe a little of that is true. Maybe. But the truth of the matter is that now, as an adult, I have no interest of denigrating moms, denigrating the African mom style, the Nigerian mom style. But there is something worth talking about, right? And it is about the power of a mother and the way our mothers, if they were women who had a Nigerian influenced identity or who ascribed to Nigerian values, the way they taught us and the way they impacted us, whether it was for good and for bad, right? And it's worth speaking to because a mother's mark never leaves her child, whether or not she's even communicating with a child. Whether I've heard of some people who at some point in their life divorced themselves from their parents and their mothers, and they feel like they're so free now. But the truth is, no matter where you go as a human being, your mother's mark never leaves you. Even if she was not present, the fact that she wasn't present will always mark you. So, dear Nigerians, our mothers were tigers. Let's explore this topic and specifically how it impacted us. And the best way to explore this topic is with my Nigerian mom. You know, she's the flavor of Tiger Mom that I know best. So I asked her to speak with me on this episode, and she obliged. Here we go. Let's listen to my conversation with my mom. Dear Nigerians, our mothers were tigers. Here we go. All right. Hi, Mom.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Okay. So first of all, I want to say thank you for having this conversation with me. Funny thing is, with this podcast, I actually thought Dad would be the first person I interviewed, but what's on my heart is to chat with you first, about a topic that came up while I was preparing, and it is Dear Nigerians, our mothers were tigers. But before we go to that, I want to ask you some fun questions first, just an icebreaker, right? Okay. The name of this game is How Well Do You Know Your Child? Obviously, your child being me. Okay. All right, here we go. Where are my questions? Let's see if I can find my questions. All right. So, what was your child's favorite cartoon or TV show growing up?
Well, wasn't it Tom and Jerry? I think it was Tom and Jerry.
It was Tom and Jerry. I still watch Tom and Jerry. Okay. Does your child prefer jollof rice or fried rice?
Fried rice.
Fried rice. All right. It's jollof rice.
Well, it's because I don't see you make it these days. You make more fried rice than jollof rice. So
I
I
make
thought
fried rice because it's easier to make, but I do
I,
make jollof rice.
I thought maybe your tastes have changed.
No, fried rice is just easier to make. That's all.
Okay, all
All right.
right.
When your child was younger, what was their most prized possession?
I would say it was your artwork designs, I think.
Okay, that's a good one. I actually don't even know the answer to this question. I know that when I was younger, there were two things I really liked. My doll, my Sally doll. Do you remember that? I had a white doll with like afro hair. It was
Yes, I
blonde
remember.
afro hair. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then I loved my Mickey Mouse. So those
Oh,
two.
yes. Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah, you remember that. All right.
I
Yeah.
remember
You
that.
remember my toys. Okay, awesome.
Yeah, because your dad got the Mickey Mouse when he traveled. I think he got it from the US or something.
Yeah, yeah. That was my favorite. And then the Sally doll I really loved. But yes, my artwork is also a very, very good answer. Which leads to the next question. What was your child's dream job when she was little?
Little as in how old?
Oh man, Mom. You need an age. Okay. Five? Five. Let me
Oh,
see if
at
you know this
5.
one.
I think didn't everyone want to be a doctor?
No, everyone did not want to be a doctor. Oh gosh. This conversation, our mothers were tigers, is so appropriate. No, everyone did not. I did not want to be a doctor. Okay? Please try again.
Oh, try again. Try again. Pilot to fly.
Yes, I wanted to be a pilot at 5 years old.
Pilot to
What
fly
made you
and
say
to
that?
fly. I remember something about flying planes or something.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, awesome. At 5, I wanted to. Yes, I've always been enamored by planes. But yes, at 5, I wanted to be a pilot. How about at 10?
I don't think I know the answer to that one.
Oh
If
gosh,
if
this is interesting. Oh,
I'm,
13?
I'm just gonna guess I thought you wanted to be a designer.
Exactly. Yeah. I want to be a designer. Okay, awesome. Mom, you did pretty good on these questions. Let me see. Which one did you not really get? The jollof rice or fried rice one?
Well, that's because you seem to be making more fried rice these days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that no, I prefer jollof rice,
I
right?
was
But
gonna say jollof rice, but you make more fried rice
yeah.
when I come to your house.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Mom, you did pretty good. Okay, here's the last question. It's not even a quiz. It's just for you to answer. What is one hobby or interest your child has that you are proud of? I don't know the answer to this question. You give me the answer to this one.
Influencing on media, I think,
Really?
and also worshiping God,
Oh,
bringing
okay.
people into the presence of God.
Oh, that's awesome. So wait. You're proud of my social media forays?
But I'm more proud of you worshiping God
No,
first,
no, no,
and
no, no.
then
I understand. Yes,
yeah.
yes, yes, yes. Okay, but wait a minute. I have to go back to the social media one because you are like your generation, queen of privacy, and you don't like some of the stuff I share.
Well, it depends on what you're sharing, and it depends
Depends.
on what influence you're trying to, make out there, and
Yeah.
what impact is it, making on other people. So those are important. And because I see also that most of the things you share are faith-based,
Hmm.
so yeah, uh, and those are things that will make a lot of impact in the kingdom. So that we are proud of, certainly.
Awesome. Oh, I got a we, not just you, it's a we. Okay, cool. Well, yeah, I think that's a great answer because I think it contextualizes our conversation for you as a mother of faith, right? So I'm sure like a lot of your answers are going to be coming from that perspective. Awesome. We are done with how well do you know your child. Thank you, Mom.
You're welcome.
All right, let's go into it. Okay, so here's where I want to start, right? I remember asking you to do this conversation with me, and I told you what the title was. I told you, hey, Mom, I would love to have this conversation with you, and I'm going to title it Dear Nigerians, Our Mothers Were Tigers. And giving our upbringing and our Nigerian background, I then decided to proceed to start explaining the meaning behind tigers and please don't take it as offense or etc. But before I could even do that, you cut me off and you said, you can call me a tiger as long as I achieved what I was trying to achieve as a parent. So here's my first question. If you were to think about when you were raising me and my brother, what were you trying to achieve with us as a parent?
It was very important that you turn out right. It was important to me, that you were better than I was, and that you get to go to places that I wouldn't get to, and that you fulfill God's purpose and path and plan for your life. That's very important.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, that you become who God created you to be.
Okay. Um, you just said a lot. So I want to kind of piece into some of those things a little bit. When you say like you wanted me to turn out right, honestly, especially my generation, right is very subjective. It's very, very subjective. Like if you ask people what turning out right as an adult means, there might be some commonalities, but I know even amongst people who are raising children now, we're aiming for different things. What was turning out right for you in terms of your perspective?
Turning out right for me was you becoming an adult useful to society, and first of all useful to God and to yourself. Um, you being able to fend for yourself, being able to put out your face out there and have your head above the waters. You overcoming life, because life is full of challenges.
Yeah.
You being an all-round person who can overcome whatever life throws at you.
Mm.
That's very important.
Okay, cool. And then you also said that for you, your goal was that we turned out better than you. That hit me a little bit. And I don't know that I know why that hit me. I think there's a vulnerability in that, and that's why I kind of want to camp around that fire for a little bit, right? When you say I was raising children and I wanted them to be better than me. Like for me to say that, you know, it means, for me anyway, it means I have to have acknowledged areas where I'm not so strong, right? Do you know what I mean or no?
Not necessarily. It, it
Okay,
was
okay,
it was coming out of the fact that things are getting complicated out there, and it's just necessary for us to push ourselves forward and to the next level to be able to overcome life's challenges. I wouldn't know what will happen in future, but I imagine that the world is going forward, and I just would want you to be better at being able to overcome those challenges.
okay. So it wasn't coming from a place of vulnerability, that desire.
No, no, not at all, because I do not think that it's coming out of a place where, you know, I felt that maybe I was weak in certain areas.
Okay.
I mean, to the glory of God. I mean, I came out better than my parents.
Mm,
My father didn't go to university. Neither did my mom, but they were
mhm,
both educated, in their times, and they were successful people,
mhm.
business-wise and financially. So it would be important to everybody to just make sure that our path is shining brighter and brighter, and the people coming behind us actually go better. They're better, they go further, and they go higher than us.
Mhm.
So I think it was coming from that point of view.
Okay, but let me ask another question too. Being your daughter, I know what it was like being raised with you as a mom. Before we even go into asking things about what you did as a mom, it'd be helpful to know the sort of house you were raised in. Is there anything you can share about the standards in your house, like especially for you as a girl, and how that started to influence you by the time you became a mom? And it can be both positive or negative things.
Oh, the standards that our parents had for us, especially for us girls, gosh, the standards were very high, and we were expected to be able to do everything. We were expected to be well-rounded, educated, well-trained, and just generally well-mannered and pleasant, and at the same time, good-looking, neat and good-looking.
Good looking.
So
You were expected to be good looking. What does that
you
look
had,
like practically? Like what? You had to
it
check out
meant
your
you
mirror.
had to check out that you're clean. You had to clean yourself,
Okay.
make sure that you are neat.
Whose standard was that? Was that your mom or your dad? Or both?
It was my mom. More
Okay.
my mom. Oh, my mom was tough.
Okay. Your mom was tough. Okay, tell us more.
My mom was tough. Gosh, my mom was tough. You had to be almost everything. You had to be respectful. You had to be hardworking. And you had to be very good at your studies. Nothing was left off the table. You just had to be up and coming, and everything was well provided for. You got everything you needed. You didn't need anything from outside, from anywhere. So that was just the kind of mom my mom was. uh, she was a very strict disciplinarian,
Mm-hmm.
very, very strict.
Mm-hmm.
uh, Very, very strict. And at this
Okay, the
very
strictness is
strict.
intense. Ah,
And at the thing, you're very strict. My mom was
mhm.
strict.
Okay.
That's the way we were raised in those days. I mean,
Unfortunately, I only
huh?
know her as Sweet Granny.
Oh yes, because at that time she was already old.
Yeah.
And when you see your children turn out the way you want, there is no need to be too tough anymore because the goal was achieved. And that's, I think, what I was talking about when I said to you that as long as I achieved my purpose, I
Yeah.
didn't care if anybody called me a tiger mom. My mom was a tiger mom. If she wanted to tell you something, she didn't have to say it with her mouth. She would say it with her eyes. She would say it with her face. She would say it with everything. You just needed to, be straight and narrow and,
Hmm.
toe the line. At the same time, she was loving. You knew that everything was coming from a good place.
Hmm.
And anyway, that was the standard in almost every home at that time in Nigeria,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
everybody was raising their child, especially their girl children,
Okay. Let me ask a question. I
to
wanted
be
to ask a question, but let me. Oh,
to be
go ahead.
balanced.
Go ahead. Raising
Yeah,
girls to be
to be
balanced. Okay.
balanced all round. Yes.
Okay. Just starting from where you were raised, like where did this thing come of Nigerian children needing to be doctors, lawyers, or engineers or financiers if they can't achieve those top three things?
That's that's a Nigerian thing actually. Everyone in those days wanted their children to be professionals.
Is it just those days though? Because you and I had some medical school conversations.
Well, it's yes, and that's because when you are in the profession, it's almost like at least financially, your future is guaranteed. Well, only God knows what the future holds, but at least you have a profession you can work in. You have a job that can fetch you money, and you'll not be a liability to yourself or to anyone.
Okay.
So that's really why many parents, look for their children to be professionals. And once you get a certification, you can do, many people believe you can do other things, but at least you have that to fall back on.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pause that conversation there because I
Yeah.
think that's gonna open up a can of worms, and I'm happy to open up the can of worms. There is just one place I want to go first because you said that you emphasized that your mom was strict. So let me ask you a question. When it came time for you to raise children, raising a boy and a girl, would you say that you yourself were strict because of that upbringing, or would you say that you were strict because of other things, or would you say that you weren't strict at all?
I was strict.
Hmm.
Okay. I will say that I was strict, but you also know that you were both loved and you had
That's without
everything,
question. Yeah.
everything provided for you. It
Yeah.
was the same way my mom brought us up too. We were loved, but they were strict. And the reason parents are strict is because of all the vices out there.
Hmm.
You need to raise people who are balanced, people who know that
Yeah.
out there may be bad, but in here in our homes, we have love and we also have standards. We have principles to go by. It's those standards that actually help you to become balanced at the end of the day.
Okay. So let's drill into it. Like you were strict. You said that. Like what did that look like practically, right? Where could we go? Where could we not go? What could we do? What could we not do? I'm actually wanting you to list out these things, and let me tell you why. Earlier this year, I was speaking at work, right? Not at work. I was speaking on behalf of my work at a conference. I was talking to a young lady, and in the process of talking to the young lady, I just mentioned in passing that I was Nigerian and raised in a Nigerian household. And then she began to ask, what do you Nigerians do? Every one of you that I meet are successful. So literally, you were strict, you said. What did that look like for you? Like with friends or outing or dating, stuff like that. Please let's let the world know. What did that look like for you? I could say some things I remember, but I want you to speak first.
There were just standards. This is what the expectation is as to where you can go, how you can dress up. What we had rules in our house, for instance, on what days you can watch TV. You know that
Mhm.
when you were in high school, you couldn't watch TV Mondays to Friday. It
Mhm.
was only at the weekend.
Mhm.
And this is the way you behave towards the people who are older than you.
Mhm.
And a lot of these things is actually about what people learn from their parents. Behavior is learned,
Mhm.
especially whether good or bad. Children learn from their parents. So you as a parent too have to be a good example. So
Mhm.
you saw how your parents behaved. You saw how we were prayerful. You saw how we didn't cheat, how we believed in working hard. You saw how we also treated other people. The cardinal principle is love others.
Yeah.
As you would like to be loved, do unto others as you would like others to do to you. I mean, those are the basic guiding principles. But
Yeah.
above all, too, be honest. Honesty, integrity, you teach it, and children also learn from you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
So here's what
and
I
then
remember.
hard
Go
work
ahead. Yeah,
and hard
hard work.
work.
Okay. Here's what I remember. Yes, no TV. We went to school, we came back and did not watch TV. Although
You did
sometimes
your homework?
we did our homework. Although sometimes when we knew you wouldn't find out, we did turn the TV on every now and then. It wasn't a lot.
I,
Uh,
I I'm not surprised.
yeah, I know. But no, honestly though, I don't watch a lot of TV because of that. So that's one thing. There were also, if I remember correctly, we couldn't play with everybody. We couldn't. Not everyone was a friend we could play with. And even if I remember correctly, even the friends that we played with, if something was off, you would also put the boundaries down. I remember that. I remember also, yeah, academically, the standard was 100 or nothing. It was, right? Okay, fine, maybe
No, it was
97.
just make sure you do well. That's what the standard
Maybe
was.
95 was okay, but like if it's
Get
not
an
a
A.
95 plus, yeah,
Get an
if it's not a
A.
95 plus, there is a problem and we need to talk. I remember that. What else do I remember? Academics, I remember. Yes. Okay, that's where I was asking questions as far as like where this doctor, lawyer, engineering. Specific career paths were favored and specific career paths were not favored, right? Medicine, for example, was favored as opposed to a creative, I want to sing, I want to design, right? So that's that. What else? Okay, yeah. No dating, right? Like I'm just listing them out. And that's how practical I'm trying to get. And truly I'm doing that for the sake of that person that was asking, how are you guys the people that you are? Like these are the practical things that for I was personally raised up in. What else? Church was not optional. And also not only was church not optional, serving in church was also not optional. Um, I also know that in Nigeria, we were raised in a society where you can have house help, so people supporting with care of the kids. But I remember also in your treatment of them, we were to respect them. Myself
Yes.
and I, my older brother, we were to respect them. Yes, yes, they are employees in a sense. Should I use the word employees? Employees of the home and serving the home and therefore the owners of the home. It was you and dad, but obviously by extension the kids. But for example, we had Nana, and Nana was
Yes.
more like a grandma to us as opposed to
Yes.
a
The
help in the
nanny.
house. Yeah.
Yes. You
Um,
had the
the
drivers and you call them
yeah,
uncle.
they were uncles to us
They
as
were your
opposed to the
uncles.
person that
Yeah.
takes me wherever I want now, right?
Yeah.
So I
Yes.
remember that as well, and I know that for me personally, that's something I've taken like when in the times when I started working, I would talk to janitors and find out their names and learn about who they're married to and who their kids are, whereas my other colleagues would just be like, "What is she doing?" You know? So just taking that from you and just seeing people as people, not people as ranks,
Yeah.
but people as people, right?
People as
I've
people,
people as
and
people.
people want you to be interested in them.
Yeah, yeah.
People want you to relate with them as human beings. For instance, in Nigeria, if anybody came to my house, a workman, they had to eat a good meal. They had to
They were
eat a
eating.
good meal
Yes, yes.
before they
So
left
in
my
my
house.
home, when people come, people here in America are so polite, but at the very least, like I've served people who come to my home. I've served them birthday cake. I've served them right, like if
Even
they will
here,
accept it.
you come into
I've
my
served
home,
them bottles.
yeah, I offer
Yeah,
you soda.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. So those are all like I think just like from the perspective of this young lady that was asking, like those are all the standards, right? Those are all like the levels. And I think maybe some people might be listening and be like, oh, that's different. You know what I mean? So let's go into it though. If you look back at your journey, like you said you were strict, do you think there was anything you wish you would have done differently?
honestly with my children, yes, and I'll be honest. A lot of times too, many other parents who will wish they had done things slightly differently.
Okay.
Um, Not that I wish I'd done many things differently, but a few things.
Can
Um,
you please peel the layer, right? What do you think?
Yeah.
Peel it back for us, Mom.
Yes, just looking back, I think sometimes I might have been too strict.
Okay.
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes, you know,
You want to give an
I
example?
uh, uh,
That was a great response. No, Mom, please give me an example. There's nothing to like. There's no carrot that I can hold against you now. I mean, the years have passed, so please give an example.
the goal was achieved with you guys, so
No, but what? No, 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 no.
we got there eventually. So we thank God for that.
What's the example, please? Can you be honest?
Yeah, I'll try and be
No, no,
you
B,
know,
B, B.
yeah, sometimes you just feel that perhaps I should have been maybe more understanding, of the environment. Yeah,
Okay.
of what the expectations are out there, and then try to achieve a balance.
Hmm.
It's important these days to make sure that you talk to your children, get their opinions about things as well. That's important. It's important to balance the relationship. In our home, when you guys were growing up, we tried as much as possible to introduce fun, you know, make sure that during the holidays, we went out, we talked, but having that one-on-one conversation is
Hmm.
very important, especially for girls. Okay, so one area that I feel that I maybe didn't do enough, but I thank God that God helped me, is the area of, sexual education for the children,
Hmm.
being open about these things. Many of those things we left to the school to take care of, because you know that in the schools that you went to, at a certain age, they gathered you guys together. They talk to you about the different parts of your bodies. They talk to you about, how babies are made and things like that. Talking about sex with your children was almost like a taboo. All, growing up, all you told them was no dating, no too much proximity to the opposite sex.
Hmm.
I don't know whether you understand where I'm coming from. So I wish I'd done better there.
Yeah.
But thankfully, it was part of the school curriculum,
Hmm.
and we eventually talked about it. But it's good for parents to be the first introducer of the sex topic, with your
The sex
children.
topic.
Yeah, it's a topic. I mean, of
Yeah.
sexual education.
Hmm.
And also, and I know that things are going to be different even with your generation raising kids. It's the people behind us now, they are a Y generation. They want to know the reason for everything. In our time, you just took whatever your parents told you as the gospel truth and you ran with it.
Yeah.
So I just wish that maybe I had also given you guys some input. We got there eventually by the time you guys were in college, but we got there where you also had a voice at the table. But I just wish that we had given you a voice at the table
Yeah.
much, much earlier.
I want to have honest conversation about this one again because this conversation is meant to serve other people. And I'm gonna, respond to it, but not respond to it in a way of being rude, but just respond to it in terms of the reality. You actually brought the conversation of sex up. I thought I would have to be the one to bring it up, but I'm glad you did. And I'm glad you're saying that you wish this is an area where you did more. So this is my personal belief. The government can say whatever they want about what they want to allow kids to do in terms of sexuality. The government can do whatever they want. A school system can do whatever they want. I personally believe that in the middle of the governments and school systems and even churches, it is a parent's God-given right to be the first person that influences your child, their sexuality, their belief in who they are from a sexual perspective and identity. I honestly feel that if you look at every single child's history or human being's history, like literally there will be that one point, something, one instance that happened in their life where God was like, okay, parent of this child, this is the time, right? And I think historically, a lot of Nigerians have not taken that opportunity. I think that's one thing that God puts on the table for every single parent.
I
And
agree
like
with you.
when He puts it on the table, you got to snatch it,
I
right?
agree.
I'm going to be honest with you. I have seen it already with my child. For example, I have a boy and a girl, and one day I'm dressing them up for bed, and my eldest makes a comment about her younger brother's body. Why is it different? That's God putting something on my plate. Like, here you go.
Right there.
You know what I mean? So I literally think that's an area where traditionally a lot of
So what
Nigerian
did you
parents,
tell her?
I
You
explained.
just tell her it's a boy. He's a
I
boy. You are a
explained.
girl.
He's a boy, and that's why he looks like that, and you're a girl, and that's why you don't have that. You know what I mean? It's like a cake that God puts in front of you, and you got to sit down and eat that cake. You can't walk away from it. And I know I'm going to keep getting little pieces of cake when she's 6 and she's 13 and all of that. So when you said that, you eventually got there when we were in college, I want to say this not out of disrespect to you, but just out of reality. A parent cannot hope to, by college, have the conversation about their children's sexuality. Like that is just not something, it should never ever be, quite frankly, because at some point your body's going to be telling you things,
I
your body's going to
know.
make you desire things. So,
I
but
know.
but
It was.
especially in the day we live.
I agree with you, especially in the days we live in right now. Uh, Sex was just a taboo. Uh, I, I wouldn't say that parents have a fear of talking about sex, but it was more like you were always looking for what the appropriate time was. And it was always also coming from the view that teaching them about education, focusing on that. Schoolwork is more important than, talking about sex. I agree with you. You Anyone who is parenting right now needs to be able to talk to the children openly about these things. And it's got to be age appropriate.
Hmm.
So you need to start talking to your children about their sexuality, about their being created in the image of God and how special they are, how
Hmm.
God has made them specially for His own purpose in their lives.
Yeah.
And yeah, so whatever the children are getting from church, whatever they are getting from school in terms of education, should only be an add on to what you have already done.
Yeah,
The
because to
parents
be
should
quite
set the
frank,
foundation.
and I honestly, we may have to move on because this conversation of sex is probably a longer one. But like you said, whatever the children are getting from school and whatever they're getting from church should only be an add-on. But I'm telling you, like right now, to be quite frank, even the things gotten from schools and some churches are not even healthy for kids, right? So,
Unfortunately, especially in
yeah.
this side of the world. Yeah.
Actually, especially also in Nigeria, to be quite frank. Like when it comes to the topic of sex, and we don't have, I wouldn't even call it a luxury, but there right now in this world, you just cannot sit and say, I'll talk to my children about this by college. Like it just can't be. But let's go ahead and move on. There's something I want to talk about. You said you wish you were more aware of the environment, but I think I should give some context, right? You started raising us in Nigeria. And then before we were teenagers, we came here and you were raising us in the West and you were raising us in Naperville, Illinois, which is a suburb of the US defined by access. Please correct me if I'm wrong, right? But when we came to Naperville, you had done well in Nigeria, but there's still a level of building that you both had to do for this country, right? So
Okay.
I wouldn't necessarily say coming to from Nigeria and starting here, we're a family of access to things. However, when we went to school, we had friends who had access to things. For example, till this day, if you drive past the parking lot of my high school, you will see students' cars and you will see Hummers and Benzes and Porsches. You would. Not every child, right? But I want to talk about that a little bit because you're coming from parenting in Nigeria where everything was largely communal and there's largely values that most people 99% of people abided by, even though the tribes were different, right? That, like the respect for elders, all of that stuff. And then the ground is changed underneath you, and now you're parenting in this place. What were all your initial reactions to it? Like, was there a point where you really truly recognized the difference that, okay, the ground level has changed here and something is very different? Can you talk me through that a little bit?
Oh, definitely. One area is in with respect to dating. I remember that your brother was at that time when we came, he was 10, I think 10 plus,
Yeah.
and it in Nigeria he had already done some, I think, 2 years of junior secondary school. So we were expecting that he would be going to high school. But then when we got here, we were told that they fix them into classes by age. So by his age, he would be in a middle school. And so when your dad took him to the middle school, which was right by a house at that time where we lived in
Mhm.
Naperville, the apartments community where we lived. There was a high school there, and we expected him to be placed in the last year of a middle school there. We expected him
Mhm.
to be placed in the last year of middle school, which was grade 8.
Mhm.
And the principal didn't force anything. They told us that by age it should be in grade 6. And so they said they'll give him an exam to take the grade 8 exams. And so he took the exams and he passed.
Mhm.
Because in Nigeria, kids rush through school. I think
Mhm.
parents rush their kids through school, and these
Mhm.
things are not regulated. But the woman was very wise. She now told your dad, let me take you to the class of
Mhm.
the 8th graders. So he said he got
Oh,
into their
yes. Okay,
class.
so he was 10 plus, an eighth grader would be 13. Yes. Okay, let's go.
So he said he went in there and he saw big girls and big boys, all taller
Big
than.
girls and big boys, please tell us what you mean by big. Please describe.
No, no, no. The way they were dressed, they're not in uniforms. And it was
Right, we had
summer.
uniforms.
Yeah, and he saw them all in their tight outfits, looking nice. Some, he saw them as big girls.
So
So we,
he saw post puberty girls in their tight outfits and
yes, he
okay.
saw the boys as well. So he was now asking the principal who they were. Said, are these workers or teachers in the school? And And the principal said, no, those are 8th graders that your son is going to be in class with.
Oh, I love it.
Very, very smart woman, very smart. And thank God she did that. And then she now told him, those girls you see there, they're already dating. And dating is a no-no for us as African parents. Your dad said, no, just put him in 6th grade.
That's funny.
That's how he ended up in 6th grade. And we were talking about it at home like a few days ago, and we were just thanking God. We have no regrets. Really, Nigerian parents will rush the children. Look, we've always said it. What is 2 years in the life of a child ultimately?
Yeah.
Nothing. And that 2 years, means nothing today to Ayo. Look at where he is and look at what he's doing.
Yeah.
And he was put in the age appropriate class eventually.
Yeah.
We know friends in Nigeria, people we advised against it in Nigeria, who rushed their kids through school, and the children were affected up until today. They just
Mhm.
never made a headway. And we just thank God. I thank God. I think God just placed that woman there and gave her the wisdom on that day.
Mm.
And I'm
So
glad
so let
that
me ask. So that's the day. I
that
love
was
it.
the
Like
root
you
shot.
actually
Yes,
that was the day that you realized, okay, the ground has changed here,
it has
right?
changed.
Okay. Now I want to know now from as a mom. How did you respond to that? Like literally, did that make you start deciding, okay, this is what we have to do here now as parents, right? How did you respond to that? Was it fear? Talk
Oh,
us through
we
that a little bit.
I responded to it with a determination that
Okay.
I have to open my eyes here and I have to help my children. I have to help them to settle here properly, to take the good of the society, use it for their own good, and
Hmm.
to shun the evils of the society. And,
Do you
and,
think
and
that made you stricter as a parent?
it did. And thankfully it did. And I'm
Okay.
so glad that I wasn't working, for a few years when I first got here.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and because of that, it gave me time. I mean, you guys will go to school. We all knew when you were supposed to get home. We knew when you were supposed to leave the house to catch the bus. I knew practically, everything about your schedule. And you also got home, you had stability to come to. Food was ready for you. You got the things that you needed. And you were also taught to focus on your studies, do your
Yeah.
homework, go to bed on time, and be ready again for the next day. It
Yeah.
just made you, as a parent, more serious to know that
Yeah.
the ground has shifted. You have to be more serious. You have to focus on what's necessary and leave the minor.
Yeah. I think honestly, that's something I mean, you know of times when just randomly send you and dad thank you messages for the things you did. I think that, that stability, consistency is probably something that we took for granted that I want to say thank you for now because I'm trying to establish that stability and consistency with my children now, right? My presence and all of that. And I'm realizing how much work it takes and how much sacrifice it takes if you want to be a parent that is involved and engaged with your children, you know. So yeah, that's an area where I just want to say thank you. And I know
You're
I was
welcome.
learning it now too,
Yeah.
being a parent. So there is something I want to ask, and I think this is an area where, um, you know, I'm just kind of laying the groundwork that you started parenting from Nigeria. You were raised in a traditional Nigerian home. You started parenting from Nigeria, and what you thought your parenting journey was going to be was essentially changed because you moved to the U.S. We moved to the U.S. and then you realized the ground level has changed. The open doorways for access is a whole lot different. The exposure is so different, right? Now here's something I want to ask, right? You said that made you stricter. And by the way, without the American aspect, Nigerian parenting is traditionally still stricter. So what you're saying is that we were living in a household with even higher standards given the world that we were living in. One of the things that I know coming up as a Nigerian child in the US would be so helpful is emotional engagement from our parents. Do you think that there were times where you prioritized discipline and strictness at the expense of being emotionally available?
Yeah. There
Mm,
were times like that, yes. But
yeah,
I'm just gonna say I don't think it was all the time. There were times like that
yeah,
where the end was more important
yeah.
than anything else. Yes, there were times like that.
Do you think that was the right choice? Like looking back, do you think that's how it should be, or would you adjust that a little bit?
Maybe minor adjustments, but by and large, yeah, by and large, I think that's what I think, yeah, it should
Okay.
have been, and that's what it was.
Okay, so I've given you time because I've wanted to see things from your perspective, but I think this is a topic where I would actually share my perspective. And I want to
Okay.
share it because this being Dear Nigerians, we don't know the scope of everyone that's listening, but for sure, the culture, the air in Nigeria now is Japa, right? So there are definitely a lot of parents who are leaving and cutting short their time in Nigeria and bringing their children who are still under their care to the West or outside of Nigeria and oftentimes to the West. And this is why I want to talk about this. So painting the picture of myself, and I can only speak for myself, I can't speak for my brother, but I'm sure that there are commonalities, right? As a child that came up in Nigeria where everyone looks like you, your teachers, your top celebrities, your president, they all look like you. They may not be the same tribe, but they look like you, right? And then being brought over here, and for us, we went to a suburb with like what, 0.4% Black people. There is a sense of isolation you feel, right? You open the door and you leave your home with your Nigerian parents and your Nigerian standards, and you are in America for sure, right? You're going to school with kids who talk to parents in a way that you're not familiar with. You have an accent. You can't even pronounce the foods. Like we are, as children, exposed in a way that the parent will never be exposed, right? Um, yeah, we're exposed to the culture in a way that the child is exposed to a culture in a way that the parent will never be exposed. And that level of exposure so quickly, so abruptly is very deeply isolating, right? And it makes emotional availability actually something that a parent has to hike up, right? Um, and it's just basic questions. What did you like about today? Was someone kind to you today? Did someone do something to you that didn't make you feel okay today? Right? And it starts with those things, but those things I believe are things that open the door to when the child actually feels something that's very, very important, feel something that can be very ground shaking for them, right? So that's isolation on one level, right? Just I'm exposed to this culture. Then as
Mhm.
a Black child with an African accent, with the perspectives that people in America tend to have about Africans. Oh, do you guys live on trees? You eat that nasty food? Do you ride on a lion to go from from home to school? And I'm like, guys, the first time I saw a lion was right here in Brookfield Zoo, right? Um, right? It's deeply isolating. There's also the racial overtones, right? Or undertones that you would get exposed to, right? I think, was it you that told me that my older brother, that a child called him the N-word? Was it you that said that? I don't remember.
Yeah,
Right? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. He was 9. Well, how old was he? Like,
He was in middle school. Yeah, he
yeah,
was like 10.
yeah. So those are things that's like,
But
as,
but the
go ahead.
nice thing too is that I don't at that time I don't know what the schools are like now. The school frowned on things like that. And the boy who did that was actually, punished. He was
Sure,
reprimanded
sure,
for it. His parents were involved and everything.
sure.
His mom had to bring him to the house to apologize, to Ayo.
Yeah. That
Yeah,
and but see that's an upstanding example. There are many examples that are not upstanding, right? So
yeah,
I'm just sharing those things so a parent who might be listening in can get a sense. But here's the other level of isolation too, right? You get into this world, you suffer some pains and you suffer some abuses. All of us did in some way, shape, or form, whether it was people making fun of our hair, making fun of our accent, making fun of our skin tone. We all suffered it, right?
yeah,
Making fun of the food that you packed for us to go eat in school, making fun of the fact that we couldn't even mention the name of the foods, right? But I think I made my point. But then here's the other level of isolation, right? You go into this world and you have to learn to swim in this world, and then you start to learn to swim. And that swimming means you have to imbibe some of the American culture. Then we come home to you looking very much unlike the Nigerian children that you think you're raising, right? We're starting to sound different. We're starting to like different foods. We're starting to like certain type of shows. We're starting to use certain phrases like you guys, right? And that for you is like unsettling. And in some cases, a parent might be like, I need to discipline all this stuff out and beat all this stuff out of my child. But that becomes extremely isolating. Like you're isolated at school, and then the person that you're coming home to, the person you are becoming is no longer even accepted at home. So it's like double levels of isolation, right? Um, so to your response that you don't think, you know, that you prioritize discipline over emotional availability, and maybe that's you would say that you wouldn't adjust that too much. I personally disagree.
yeah.
Because yeah, I personally disagree because like if a parent, like, granted, for most families making this decision, even though this decision ends up being best a good decision for your child didn't ask for that, right? Didn't
True,
ask for the
true.
change. Like for me and Io, we just saw things were being packed up around the house. What's going on, right? Um, we didn't ask for that. And so we find a way to swim. And I think this is probably something that, again, Nigerian parents may take for granted in wanting to push your child to achieve and to turn out right and to respect the elders. And it's like I'm adjusting in ways I don't even know how to adjust. And the level of isolation that can happen outside of the home and inside of the home, I I think there needs to be a lot more emphasis on emotional
Yeah.
availability. There needs
I
to be a
I
lot more. Go ahead, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I agree with you now if you put it that way that the child is suffering isolation on two fronts. I agree with you. And that's one of the reasons why I said it's important to be there and that I wish that I'd done a few things
Mm,
differently to hear the voice of the child, more. And I like the way you put it, where you said that, asking them on a daily basis what happened in school today. Yes, the parent should not assume that the child will come willingly to them to give them information about, what happened
yeah,
in school today. I think, yeah, I agree with you,
yeah.
on that front. But I also say this, problems are meant to be solved, and man should actually overcome the problems. Perhaps, maybe that separation problem that you talked about, isolation, sorry, problem that you talked about, um, that the Nigerian children find ways of overcoming is what actually helps them to stay on top of the challenges in their life going forward, in their career, in their college days. Maybe it just makes them tougher on the inside.
I would agree to that. I would agree. But I don't think toughness has to come at the expense of the emotional availability of a parent. I don't. I don't think an emotionally available parent is going to raise a soft and incapable child. I don't, you know. So, and I think sometimes um that's where we as Nigerians need to adopt more nuance. It's not, I'm going to be strict and rigid with you, and if I don't, you're going to turn out a mess, right?
But you know that you were not raised like that.
That what?
You
Like
know
what?
that you were not raised like that, where your parents were rigid and rigid about
I've
everything.
I have said it on this platform. I feel like in comparison to many Nigerian homes, I probably had a louder voice in the house than you know. But I'm just saying, right? We still have that. We were still a Nigerian home in that sense. If an American walked into our home and watched the way you parented, they would be like, "Yo, y'all are different," right? So that's it, right? So I'm not saying that you raised us with an iron fist. I'm making the point as far as like emotional availability goes.
I
Um,
agree with you.
yeah,
I agree.
yeah.
I
And
agree
this
with you.
this this for me is worth saying again to worth saying for parents who might be Nigerian parents, Nigerian influenced parents who might be leaving the country and coming here and raising children. I think it's also worth saying to parents with a Nigerian influenced identity. Maybe they were raised here, and because of their own story, being raised here, they feel like they have to adopt the Nigerian toughness. And I don't see an issue with the Nigerian toughness as long, or maybe I shouldn't say toughness, the Nigerian high standards as long as it's married with emotional availability. There's so many things that your child is going to witness, your child is going to encounter. I think, you know, things like mental health and gender identity issues that are a big thing here now in America. And it's not waiting until kids are 20. It's coming at 5 and 6. And like you said, being aware of the environment requires a lot of emotional availability. It
Yeah,
requires a lot of room for children to question things and to hear the answer, and also to hear from parents, I don't know, we need to figure it out, as
yeah,
opposed to because I said so, you know?
yes, yes.
So that's
I
that's
agree.
where I would disagree with what you said. Yeah.
Okay, I agree with you. Yeah,
Hmm.
times are different, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. So this has been an awesome conversation. I think we talked about some things. For the sake of this conversation serving my generation of millennials, a lot of us are starting to parent. Some Gen Zs are starting to parent, but a lot are at this point just figuring out like ending high school and maybe starting their careers, right?
yeah.
Um, what advice would you give to the next generation of Nigerian influence mothers, as far as parenting goes, being a mother that still is able to raise, as you said, children that turn out right, as you defined it? What advice would you give in hindsight? What advice would you give me in hindsight?
One thing that I'm seeing happening now is that technology is taking the place of parents in the lives of the
Mm,
children.
mm,
That together time that parents used to have with their children
mm,
is no longer there. And the children feel it too. They need to feel connected with their parents. Even while you're with the children, you're still on the phone. You'll go out to eat dinner together as a family. You're still distracted by your telephone. I understand that in those days, even Americans will tell you that the way the family was in those days was that at dinner, the whole family gathered together at table. And also for breakfast, they gathered together and they actually talked about their problems, about their lives,
yeah.
about, what's important to them. So I think these are the days where parents, your generation, would have to find a way, of
Yeah.
yeah, of finding that together time with yourselves. And it's not something that's, haphazard, not something you do
Yeah.
today and you don't do tomorrow. It's something you'll be committed to. And it's important for the child to grow up knowing that they are relevant, they are important, and their feelings count.
Hmm.
Because if the child does not feel that his opinion counts, he's not going to say anything.
Yeah.
So one of the areas I said I'm feeling that I should have had some little adjustments is having that child, developing a relationship with your child enough that your child knows that my parents have my back no matter what.
Hmm.
And so, whatever issue or whatever is bugging me, I can discuss and I can talk to my parents.
Awesome. Thank you for joining and thank you for being a part of this conversation. Dear
Thank you.
Nigerians, this is my mom, who I did not introduce at first. Do you want to introduce yourself, mom, or shall I introduce you?
You can go ahead.
Okay. This is my mom, Mrs. Ola Odusanya. Yes. Yeah, the woman who born me and raised me and helped to establish a lot of values that I ascribe to today, and of course in partnership with my dad. Thank you, Mom, for being a part of this convo, and
Thank
we
you.
hope to have you on future episodes.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.